Hello everyone and welcome to Beginner's Code, a place for you to learn with me as I dive deeper into the coding world. Before I start, this video is brought to you by SiteGround. If you're looking for a hosting service that is fast, reliable and has great customer service, please do check out the link in the description below. This is an affiliate link, so if you do end up being a SiteGround customer through my link, I will receive a little and this will be extremely beneficial for the channel. Or if you're wanting to learn more about Python, then make sure you check out my website, Instagram or GitHub for projects. The links for these will all be in the descriptions below, so please do check them out. Also, don't forget to subscribe to see more videos from me as I teach you through the basics. Today we will be looking at some more useful operators, including how to grab user input and manipulate the data the user has inputted. Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at is the type function, and the type function actually comes built in with Python. It basically allows us to check the data types that we have and just to see what data type it is. So for example, what we can do is just create a variable, and for argument's sake I'll name it num, and we can just assign it any number. Now what we can do is use the print function and pass in the type function with a parameter of the variable or the data type. So for our sake, I'm going to use the actual variable name, and if I pass this in, then down here we get an output of class int, and this actually represents object-oriented programming, and it will be something that we get onto soon. But basically, in essence, everything that you make in Python when it's made with a variable is a object. It has methods that can be used on the object, and there are certain different things that can be only used if it's that specific data type. So for example, a string would only be able to use the split method, and a list would only be able to use the join method. So there are certain methods that are only applicable to certain data types. And you'll know that the integer data type doesn't actually have that many. But you'll see that as we look through, there are a lot of different data types that are made through classes. And eventually what we can do with object-oriented programming is create our own class. So for the next part of this exercise, I'm going to look at floats. So if I create a float and then print the type and pass in the variable, you get down here class float. Now we can also just create a string by just passing in an empty string for this exercise, and if I run this we get class string or str. We can also check the booleans and we get bool back. And then we can check lists, even if it is an empty one. And you get class list. We can also do the same with tuples. And we get class tuple. We can do the same with set by calling the set function. And we get setback or class set. And finally, we can do the same with dictionaries. And here you'll see we get class dictionary back. Now we're going to have a quick look at the input function, and the input function actually allows us to ask the user to enter some data, whether it's their age or their name or something more like a caption for a photo. There are lots of different reasons as to why we might use the input function, but just so you know, it does actually pause the program until the user has entered whatever they are meant to enter. So for example, if I create a variable called word and then just use the input function and save this and then run, you'll see down here it actually changes colour when I click off it and click on it. So this here is an indicator that we are able to type something into the terminal. So for example, if I was to just type in hello and press enter, we get hello back because that's what I typed in, but we don't actually get it back in the program. So what this means is it is currently stored inside this word variable. So what I can do is now print the word. So if I run this and then type in hello, you'll see down here we actually get it back twice. And because this is finally printed, the program is finished and we are now on to the next line. So to show that it pauses, if I run this, you'll see down here it stays like that and will stay like that until I either Control C out of it or until I enter something in. Now, this input function, we can also pass in a message. So this will contain a string, and it should really prompt the user to enter something that you want them to enter. So if you wanted them to enter their age, then you'd say, please enter your age. Or if you wanted them to enter their name, you'd say, please enter their name. So for this sake, I will just enter, please enter your name. And then if I run this, you get down here the string, please enter your name. If I type in Chris, we get back just the name of Chris. Now, we can also get them to enter their age. So if I change this to age and change this to age, it does support them entering numbers as well. However, if I was to then try and see how old I would be in double the amount of years, and then ran this and put in 26, we get back 2626, and in double my lifetime I would not be 2,626 years old, I should really be 52 years old. So what does this actually mean? Well, if you remember back to when we were learning about strings, there are a certain amount of mathematical operators we can actually use on them, including multiplication, which basically duplicates, or plus, which concatenates. So what we can't do, for example, is minus. So if I was to see how old or how long I've been over the age of 18 for, this won't work. So if I type in 26, what we should see is 26 minus 18, which is 8. However, we actually get back unsupported operand type for string and int. So whatever is typed in by user input is always a string. So if I check this, the type of it, and I just type in hello, we get back class string. So it is always a string that is entered. Now, this can be quite annoying when you're creating a program that you want the user to enter a number and then use the number as a conditional operator. So if you were to say, if age is double equal to 18, print, you can legally drink. So if I had ran this and then typed in 18, we don't get anything back, and that's because there isn't an else statement. So what it's actually doing here is checking to see if the age that they've entered, which is a string, is double equal to the integer 18, which obviously it's not. So if I was to type in, you can't drink, and then ran this, we get back, you can't drink. And that's because 18 isn't the same as the string of 18. However, what we can do is wrap the input function in an integer, and then we can ask the same thing. So now if I type in 18, you get, you can legally drink. I should really change this to 18 over 18 or equal to 18. So now if I type in 26, we get you can legally drink as well. Now this integer function does help. However, if I was to type in the letter, or if I was to write 18, we get invalid literal for int. And that's because it wants a number. Because we've wrapped it in this integer function, it will always be looking for a number. So one of the best ways to do this is to wrap the variable here, where we're using it, in an integer function. And we get the same back, you can legally drink. And that's because it's still accepting it as a string, but then when we use it here, we are transferring it to an integer to make sure that it is correct. Now a lot of uses for user input can be whether or not it's used as conditional for while loops. So, for example, if you wanted the user to use the game or use the program until they had decided they had had enough. So, for example, if they were using a calculator and they were choosing which operation they wanted to use, if they were to type in the word quit, then you can use that as a flag to terminate the program. So, for example, if I was to just say while, actually up here, if I do word is equal to input, please enter a word, type quit to end. Now, if I do while word is not equal to the string of quit, we just print the word. So whatever they type in here, we will print until they eventually type in the word quit. So down here, we get hi. Sorry, I should have actually put that inside the while loop, that's my bad. So now if I save this and run it, we get back, okay. So now, if I create a word and pass in an empty string and run it, we get hi, and we get hi back. Now yes, we get yes back, hello, and then beginner's code. And if I type in quit, the program has finally ended and there are no problems with that. So the next thing we're going to speak about, or the next useful operator we're going to speak about, is the enumerate operator. And the enumerate basically allows us to loop through a list of elements and it allows us to keep track of them. So what this would actually look like is if I create an index count and assign it to the value of 0, and then, and then I use a for loop and I loop through 10 different values. I then would to print an f string that holds the index count and then the number that we're looping through. So for example, it will loop through and it will be 0, 0, and then underneath, if we do index count plus equal 1, so it'll be 0, 0, and then we'll increment the index count to 1, and as we go back through, it will be 1, 1, and then we'll increment, so it'll be 2, 2. So when I save this and run, you see down here, the first one is the index count, the second one is the number. So every element it goes through, it will actually keep track of the index count, and then it will loop through the numbers. So the enumerate can be really, really useful for lists of, say, letters, like letters of the alphabet, or for, any kind of data type that holds more than one element. So if I were to use the enumerate function, I can, what I'll do first is create a list and just assign it the values of A, B, C, D, and E. And then if I did for num, comma, letter in enumerate, and then list 1, and then print num letter. And then if I run this, you see down here we get 0 for A, 1 for B, 2 for C, 3 for D, and 4 for E. So it is just a lot easier way of checking to see how many elements there are in whatever we are specifying. So for example, we don't even need to have a predefined list. What I can do here is just pass in the string hello, and we get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, corresponding to each letter of the string that we've passed in here. So this is very, very useful just by having a for loop that uses 2 different throwaway variables, and then the enumerate function. So the next thing we're going to look at is the zip function, and the zip function basically allows us to zip two different data types together. So for example, if I create a list and just call it list1, and this takes in a list of numbers, and then list2, and this just takes in a list of letters, and then if I was to zip list1 and list2, what you'll see here is we don't actually get anything back. Now if I print this, we will get something back, but it basically tells us where the object is stored in our memory. So what we actually need to do is put a list around the whole zip function, and this will basically cast the output to a list and allow us to return a list of tuples. So here, because we have 5 different elements in each data type, we get 5 different tuples back. And you'll see we get 1A, because 1 and A are the first elements, 2 and B, because 2 and B are the second, and then 3 and C, 4 and D, and 5 and E. Now this is really handy because now we have a list of tuples, we can actually loop through the list. So if I was to assign this to zipped and then did for num in zipped and then printed num, we can actually loop through the list and return every single tuple. Oh, my bad, there is an extra bracket there. So we get we loop through and we return 5 individual tuples. So what we can now do is unpack these tuples, and we can do num, num2. And remember, these are throwaway variables, so they do not actually represent the type of data that we're storing. It is literally just being used as a throwaway variable that we are corresponding to 1 and A. So for example, I could change this to letter, just to make things a little clearer. And then if I run this, we get 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, 5E. Now, if we wanted these on separate lines, we can print them as 2 separate things and run it. And now we get 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, and finally 5E. That's all for today's video. Hopefully this has helped your understanding on how we can take user input and add it into our programs to make them more interactive depending on what the user has inputted. If there's anything that you'd like me to cover further, please don't hesitate in reaching out to me by dropping a comment below on Instagram or through my website. Stay tuned, as in my next video I will be looking at how to create our own functions. If you liked what we've been through today and you want to learn more, please drop a like and subscribe to my channel to keep up to date. Thank you, and see you next time.